Talks are underway in Bangladesh between protest leaders and the military, which has taken charge after Sheikh Hasina's dramatic resignation as Prime Minister. She was ousted following violent unrest over a period of several weeks that left hundreds dead. Monday's events began in Dhaka when the long-reigning Prime Minister resigned and fled the country to India. These pictures here show Sheikh Hasina's helicopter leaving. At least 109 people were killed in unrest on Monday alone. What began as student protests over civil service job quotas last month then escalated into demands for the Prime Minister to stand down after 15 years in power. Not long after Sheikh Hasina left the country, thousands of anti-government protesters stormed her official residence. Those are the pictures there, while crowds celebrated on the streets. Widespread looting was also reported to have taken place, and it's also been announced that the leading opposition figure and former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia would be released from prison. 6 years ago, she was jailed on corruption charges that critics claimed were trumped up. The president has also ordered the release of jailed protesters. Well, Akbar Hussain is from the BBC Bengali service in Dhaka. I asked him who is left in charge in the midst of all of this.
There is no government in Bangladesh currently because when the Sheikh Hasina resigned and she fled the country, there is no government. This army has, it looks like army has taken charge temporarily, but the talks are underway to form an interim government. And the question is who will be heading the next interim government and who will be the people included in this cabinet. So student leaders, they are saying that their voices must be heard, and they gave a proposal that Nobel laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus should head the next interim government. And some local media, they are reporting that the Professor Muhammad Yunus has agreed to take the charge. And on the other hand, we have seen that the Professor Muhammad Yunus, he gave an interview to the Indian newspaper where he described that Bangladesh is now a free country, and he said that Bangladesh was like an occupied land during Sheikh Hasina's regime and there was no freedom. And he said that Sheikh Hasina acted like a general, acted like a dictator. So now talks are underway, and it looks like that the army is keen to form the government, interim government, either by today or tomorrow. And this is very certain that it is going to be a non-party caretaker or the interim government, because this is the most challenging task ahead, because we have seen after the fall of Sheikh Hasina and when she fled, there was a lot of celebration in the streets, and at the same time we have seen a lot of violence across the country. Only yesterday more than 100 people were killed and many police stations were set on fire, and police officers, they went under hiding. In police stations they were not attending.
Right.
To maintain the law and order is now the biggest task.
Akbar, we're showing some live pictures right now of the damage after yesterday. You're there in Dhaka. There are reports that schools have opened, but that the classrooms are empty. What is the state of the country after all this deadly unrest and the scenes that we saw yesterday of looting across the country?
We have seen the Dhaka streets are now very empty. All those schools, colleges and universities are open, but students are not going there because there is some sort of uncertainty among the guardians what will happen next, because there is no, as I mentioned earlier, there is no government in the country. So they are not getting confidence as long as a new government is installed. But at the same time, we have seen the tense situation in many parts of the country. We have seen violence is still going on. The houses and properties of leaders and activists belong to Sheikh Hasina's party. They came under attack in many places. Leaders and activists of Awami League party, which is Sheikh Hasina's party, they were beaten to death. So it's a very volatile situation, and the law and order is a very now prime issue to maintain it. And what the senior army officers, they were telling me that their prime concern is now to bring back normalcy. And they say that until or unless there is a new government, and it is very difficult to maintain the law and order only by the army.
That was Akbar Hussain in Dhaka. Well, let's speak to Archana Shukla, who's in Mumbai for us. Of course, India is a big part of this story. That is where Sheikh Hasina has fled. Archana, what do we know in terms of where all of this has left her and whether she even plans to stay in India?
Well, if we go by media reports in India, they suggest that Sheikh Hasina is using India in the interim as a base until she furthers her plan. Certain media reports like NDTV are quoting sources saying that she intends to move to London post this, but these are unconfirmed reports as of now. But so far, India has provided a safe refuge to Sheikh Hasina. And with that, India is also on a very tight diplomatic rope that they are walking on. India has had a good friend in Bangladesh under Sheikh Hasina's rule. India and Bangladesh have had long cultural and economic trade ties as well. And they share a 4,000-kilometer porous border, which at the moment is under tight security by the Indian government and Indian military, considering the violence on the other side of the border and security concerns on the Indian side as well. The Indian government so far has maintained that it is an internal matter of Bangladesh and has not commented further, even while the country's foreign minister met Sheikh Hasina briefly yesterday. The foreign minister Jaishankar has done an all-party meeting today, briefing all members of parliament on the situation, saying that India at the moment is in a wait-and-watch situation on what happens next, and that some reports say that over 8,000 students from Bangladesh, Indian students from Bangladesh, have come back to the country. So at the moment, India is keeping a wait-and-watch situation, and it definitely is a diplomatic tightrope for the country because while giving a safe refuge to Sheikh Hasina, India would not want to be on the wrong side of relationship with the interim government or the new government coming into Bangladesh. So it definitely is a wait-and-watch at the moment.
All right, Archana Shukla, thank you so much. And a reminder for everyone that we do have a live page with more updates from all our correspondents, analysis as well. And as we mentioned, Bangladesh's Prime Minister fled to India after her dramatic resignation on Monday. I asked our reporter earlier, Rani Singh, given she's a specialist on this, what she made of this historic moment for the country.
Completely historic. Sheikh Hasina was the world's longest-serving female leader. She served several terms in power, and she pretty much had been ruling with an iron grip, with the support of the military and putting people in jail and so on. So for her to actually resign is really historic. I couldn't believe it when I read the news first thing yesterday morning.
And where does this leave her now? We've said she's fled to India. We don't know if that's her final destination. And you've met her, so you know her personally in some sense.
That's right. I interviewed her for the BBC exactly 10 years ago in that very palace that's now been looted and ransacked. And the impression I got immediately is that she's very, very close with her family. We know this from the War of Liberation, that when Pakistan went to war with Bangladesh at that time in 1971. And at that time, 10 years ago, it was her nephew who handled me and asked what I might be asking her, and then went and briefed her. He went and briefed her for over an hour before I even interviewed her. Of course, I didn't tell him the questions, but he kind of prepared her. And her daughter is in India, in Delhi. She works for the World Health Organization. She lives and works in Delhi. Her nephew is in Belarus, and there's London as well. So she has a kind of choice as to where she might come. She's a very divisive figure now, as we've seen in what's been happening over the last few days and weeks in Bangladesh. So it could be that wherever she goes to, the governments of the day may be feeling a little bit queasy. However, historically, she's had a very, very close relationship with India, with previous political dynasties there. So she's very comfortable in Delhi and in India, and India has said we'll do whatever she wants us to do. She's had a meeting with the National Security Advisor, reports tell us.
Okay, so she is meeting and coordinating in some sense with India, but we don't quite know where that's leading. I wonder what you think her legacy will be, where it stands right now, because of course we've often talked about how she has left Bangladesh as one of the fastest growing economies, and yet has been criticised for this increasingly authoritarian rule. But even yesterday, as we were speaking to some of the people in Dhaka and all of this was developing, some people were pouring cold water on some of those economic achievements. I wonder what your view is.
It's true that she's seen and overseen unprecedented growth in Bangladesh. Pre-COVID, Bangladesh was growing, the economy was growing 7% per year. And she's certainly superseded some of the UN marker goals to do with literacy, to do with health. And, you know, the garment economy, it services, in Bangladesh, it services the likes of Walmart and Primark and H&M. That all is true. However, she came in under sort of a liberal regime, and her rule has seen increasing autocracy, authoritarianism. Routinely at election time, the opposition was jailed. That happened while I was there, and every election since. And most shockingly, journalists and intellectuals in Bangladesh have been jailed.
That was Rani Singh.